Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Michalski, Quinten Krzysko, Sunny Verma, and the one and only Luce. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
Ron, I want to read you a quote. Quote, "Football is a violent sport. If you don't go to that dark place and be violent and be physical, you're not going to last very long." Coach Shanahan always talks about finding a dark place. Everyone's pretty talented to be in the NFL. And I think what separates people is what's inside. In order to bring that out on the football field, you've got to be in a pretty aggressive mindset. It's a very aggressive sport. I don't care how tough you are. George Kittle, 2020. And I think that alone tells you the difference in this game today. The Bears got destroyed by the 49ers. We all had the Bears winning this game. 49ers were down. They were out. They'd scored something like 25 points in their last 2 weeks. They seemingly couldn't do anything right, but you know what? They did a lot more right than the Bears today. They made it look easy against the Bears because they were the tougher team mentally, physically. They beat the Bears up today, flat out.
They did. It was a painful, good old-fashioned ass whooping. That's really what it was. And you can tell it's the better run organization, the better coaching, the better roster. You know, even that depleted San Fran roster is still so deep. Like, yeah, I'm starting to wonder, Q, if maybe now we should just like buy in and accept that this could be what happens every week the rest of the year.
It's possible. I mean, I don't know. A part of me says I think they'll bounce back next week. I don't know if that means a win, but I think they're going to fight. And I think it's going to be a tough game. And another part of me says, why would I believe any of that after what I just watched? You know, it's like
100%.
It's a hard place to understand, right? Like this does happen all the time in the NFL. You get your ass kicked, you come back and you win a football game, or you play a tight game, or it just feels so rare that a team flat out quits on a season. Like we can think back to even like maybe 2021, like the Bears couldn't do anything right. Or maybe it was 2022, I'm thinking. Bears couldn't do anything right. They couldn't win a game for their life. And then they fight the Eagles down to the wire because they're just there and they're playing and they're feeling good that day. So like, I don't know if I say I expect this the rest of the way, but it's a possibility in any given game the rest of the way is the way I see it.
It feels like the longer this season goes on, I think we are witnessing, is this perhaps one of the worst, maybe mentally defeating seasons as a Bears fan ever? Because there was expectation and you got Caleb and you got Rome and you brought over Keenan Allen and you made some moves. The team should have been better than this, but you get the head coach wrong. The OC's completely wrong. You fire two people throughout the course of the season trying to get this right. It has been the biggest PR clown show, perhaps in any given Bears season that I can remember in recent memory.
So, Ron, when did you become a Bears fan? Like really watching every Sunday, like the Bears are what you do on Sundays?
The Bears are what they do on Sundays for me was the 05 Bears team.
05. Okay.
That's my hardcore. That's my first. I had been to a Bears game before that. I had started watching, but like that 05 team was the first team I kind of rode with, Sunday to Sunday.
Okay. So mine was 01. So I'm going to start there, and that fits the same time frame. I'm just starting there because I think there's the 2002 team deserves some mention. The year after they went 13-3, won the division in 01. Dick Duran's back. They go 4-12. So that one had to be pretty defeating. I wasn't living it the same way that I did after like 05, 06. But
sure.
Like I was watching every Sunday then. And then They sucked the next 2 years, but it was like, you knew they sucked, so they continued to suck. But 05, 06, like 05 was probably a bit of a surprise to everybody. I know it was to me. And then 06 was expectation, that felt like a Super Bowl team. They went to the Super Bowl. 07, fall down to 7-9. That sucked. But like, man, you were still in every game, right? Like, what were your feelings about that 07 season?
Yeah, there was a lot riding on that team. And, it felt largely like the same roster for the most part. You thought they were going to be able to do it. They just
back like, but I mean, that can't. I don't think it's the same level of like what you were describing at the start.
Maybe I didn't explain it correctly. Then Q, let me rephrase myself. I think it's definitely the biggest PR clown show ever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anything compares because of the firings and, maybe just the Matt Eberflus era. There's nothing that compares. How many different coordinators did you fire or position coaches over your tenure because they just couldn't get anything right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's more what it is. I think it's just the mess. Not even so much the expectation, right? There was expectation, but I agree with you, right? There's plenty of these type of collapses in Bears history. I just think with the clown show attached to it.
From that clown show perspective, I think there's 3 instances that come to mind. One is 09. You go trade for Jay Cutler. He is not good his first year, and they go 7-9. That one, that was a PR nightmare. And then the next one was probably the most similar to what we're seeing now. And this isn't to say any of them are equal. I'm just trying to throw reference out there. But 2012 through 2014, right? Phil Emery gets hired as GM in 2012, fires Lovey after the season. They hire Trestman in 13. He does okay, goes 8-8, just misses the playoffs. And then 14, the wheels fall off. So that 3-year stretch feels kind of similar to Matt Eberflus's 3-year stretch to me. And then from a PR perspective, it's going to be hard to ever look past 2019 in my mind. They were parading around the city like they just won a Super Bowl for their 100-year anniversary. Like they were the best thing since sliced bread. It was the biggest thing I've ever seen Bears related. And it was like the way that it all just came to a culmination week 1, 2019, and just that one of the worst football games I've ever watched. That one is an unmitigated disaster.
That one is certainly up there over time. Maybe Q, you know what? Maybe it's just they just find a new way to screw shit up every single time. Maybe that's what it really is at this point. Because this game today, Thomas Brown, new energy, and there was no energy with this team today. None whatsoever.
And I do think some of that roots from there was I think Nicholas Mariano was just talking about this. He said that he was talking to some of the coaches, and it was like so many guys took over new jobs this week, which means their prior job is stretched that much thinner. And there's just a lot less time spent on each job. And that's how today felt when I was watching it, right? Like it felt like everything was watered down to we didn't have time to implement it. I almost wonder if they went too aggressive in making changes and it meant everything watered down. They might have had to revert back to some simpler stuff or something. I don't know. It wasn't good. Like when I'm Jeff Berkes from Windy City Gridiron does this thing called Toxic Differential Plus. He writes an article on it every week for the whole league. It's basically the difference over the course of a season or for each game that you look at in explosive plays, sacks, and turnovers. And it correlates really strongly to wins, right? Like those are 3 things that are very strongly determine who wins a football game. Today's Bears game was tied for the worst game of the season in Toxic Differential Plus at -15. The only game that is equal to it was the Cowboys losing to the Lions 47-9 in week 6.
Woof.
That's ugly.
That is really ugly. Maybe magnifies how ugly this game actually is, Q.
Yeah. I mean,
And you
it
don't know
didn't
where they're
feel
going.
that. It felt like they were getting their butts whooped, but it didn't feel like, oh, this is the worst game of the year. Until I saw that, and it's like this was kind of the worst game of the year for any team in the league.
Underlying statistically, like this was just a horrendous game. And maybe we are a little blinded, Q. I think got to give some good, or at least we want to talk about a little bit of good. The Caleb to Rome connection is ever strong. 2 incredible throws, 2 incredible routes, 2 incredible plays. At least there's some of that we got to see, right? Maybe it is just a little bit. Today was a little more just, hey, it's high school ball on the playground. Go figure it out. Go do what you got to do to just try to be competitive. You hope that improves, but the test doesn't get easier. Not that San Francisco is the walkover team, but now you got Minnesota, who just kicked the crap out of the Falcons today in their own place. They get to stay home and welcome you, which is even worse. We get blessed, Q, with the every single time something happens as fans. It's going to be horrendous. You wish they would have just at least came out with more fight. And they just didn't do anything. There was no energy. And you gotta give energy to make all those big plays in order to win games. That's why it probably has such a high toxic rating. It actually makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I want to touch on something that Scott says here of everyone got tricked on the flashy skills players and forgot to fix the trenches. And I want to point out the 49ers starting O-line today. There was no Trent Williams out there. And it's hard to name many other guys on that. Like, it's not a very talented O-line, but the coaching, the scheme, the standard in that building, the culture of how you play football makes up that difference. All of that combined. And I think there's something here of like, I get a little defensive around this topic because I write a data article every year talking about, how do you develop a quarterback roster wise? And the numbers consistently say, get skill talent. Your O-line, as long as you can get by, but skill talent is what will help your quarterback develop. The numbers are really strong towards that. But just recently, I've had kind of an epiphany with that of thinking, well, the quarterbacks who develop really well, their head coaches tend to be these guys who scheme up their O-line really well. Like a Shanahan, like a McVay, whose O-lines I look at and say, that's the same talent the Bears have. But the Bears can't. So, like, I am wondering how much my own data is might be a little flawed with that, because there's that that unseen thing that you can't see in data of Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan can all just make O-lines work somehow.
Yeah.
And the Bears can't.
It's the it factor. It's having the football knowledge that you need and having the right people and the right talent around them. And I think we've seen like good things out of this Bears offensive line. Like, we've seen a little bit of that this season, but it's just not enough. And it's hurt. The run game has been awful. They've been playing from behind. So maybe that helps your offensive line a little bit because they're just coming after you. It's pass rush, and you wear them down. I just hope this is also this was kind of the ass whooping to kind of look up in the booth if you're, a Bears fan, and look at the ownership and the front office and say, this is the type of things we'd like to see. It's what the 49ers just did to the Bears. This is why the Kyle Shanahan trade for him and give the world and the house is what people want. Because they know what they're doing. And like you said, they just have the knack for scheming up good play for the offensive line, getting by with what you have, letting your playmakers be playmakers. It's like the Bears have gotten there, but they don't fully understand how to use it the same way some of these other organizations do.
Yeah. And so from that, we'll get to the game a little bit here before I get into what I was just thinking about getting into, because I think it is probably more important we touch on the game first before we start talking big picture stuff. But so, Ron, I want to ask you if you could think back to Think back to Wednesday when we did our game preview. Who was the first player we talked about as the baddest man on the 49ers?
I believe that would be Mr. George Kittle.
Correct.
Yeah.
George Kittle, 6 catches, 151 yards, 25.2 yards per catch. You know what the real kicker here is? His longest catch of the day was 33 yards. So that means he was consistently getting 20-plus yard catches, every single one of those.
Yeah. It was a big play game. Just constant big play after big play. I think it goes to show, though, right, how deep the 49ers truly are and get an appreciation for the type of players. Some of this is obviously how the Bears schemed defensively today, and Eric Washington not looking great as this unit just got ripped apart. But when you have a weapon like George Kittle, he could be the best weapon for a lot of teams in the league. He's what?
Mm-hmm.
On a good year, their third, fourth best option, probably third. And he was dominant. Like you said, big play after big play. It's very rare that anybody has that type of game, right? It's usually maybe 2 really big plays that carry their whole day and the rest of it's just volume. Every single time he got the football, it was just a dagger to the heart and soul of that Bears defense. And it wore him down, I think, too. And then it opened up Garendo, and it opened up Debo. And Debo wasn't even that effective. He had a couple of nice plays, but George Kittle.
2 catches for 22 yards, 5 runs for 13 yards. Like, Debo didn't really. I mean, Jawan Jennings did some stuff.
Yeah,
Isaac Garendo had a good game, but like it was the George Kittle show.
It was the George Kittle show, and they took care of business. And the defense looked good too. I mean, they largely shut down the Bears. A couple of nice throws from Caleb is really the only difference.
Yeah,
This offense had no answer.
On the George Kittle front, I had in our keys to the game, I listed Tremaine Edmonds as a player to watch because the onus was going to be on him, right? And you knew it. He knew it coming into the game. I'm gonna have to take care of George Kittle today over this middle of the field. It's gonna be me and him. I'm the athlete. I have the length. I have the size. I'm gonna have to do a lot to make sure George Kittle doesn't take over this game, and he couldn't. And that just really sucks when you think about how much he's being paid, how much is being committed to him now and in the future. And it's like, this was the game. This needed to be a big Tremaine Edmonds game for the Bears to win this game. And it didn't happen.
Q, is it just me, or did it feel like today's game was an attack on Ryan Poles? At least on within the Bears fan base on the social media channels, it's what it sounds like today. Everybody's questioning, letting David Montgomery get out the door and let some of these other really good players, Roquan Smith and so on and so forth, what they were replaced with. Now all of a sudden, like, maybe it's just because Matt Eberflus is gone, and now it's like you just look at the next layer. Yeah, the next layer. But Ryan Poles was, I think, the one that got absolutely kind of torched throughout the course of the game narrative amongst the fan base. He was just getting ripped apart, Q. And maybe do we say rightfully so now? Is this where the roster gets kind of exploited? You said it, Q. There's a lot of money racked up in Tremaine Edmonds. That was one of his, big brain signings in 2022 to, help boost the Eberflus defense. Right? Or pardon me, in 2023.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Edwards has been great. I don't think anybody's concerned about what TJ Edwards has brought to the table. But he was the lighter of your two. Your big money guy. This is the type of game where you would hope Tremaine Edmonds just silences George Kittle. Or at least neutralizes him a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
It makes less than 6 catches for 150 yards and a long of 33.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
That's a guy who was getting whatever he wanted all day long.
All day long. And I don't know. I'm this game now, Q, especially because we've seen a Thomas Brown coached game now. You see them in kind of a prime time slot window. I know they weren't all across the league, but there's only 3 games in that 3 o'clock window.
Mhm.
So they got a lot of eyeballs watching this happen today. Now I'm intrigued to see how the narrative of this front office swings, because Q, I don't know about you, and we joked about it when you jumped on, is maybe they should have fired everybody like Q said on last year's show around week 4. Is there noise all of a sudden calling for Ryan Poles now too?
There's a lot of noise about it. I mean, I saw from halftime on, all my timeline was, all my replies were about Ryan Poles being fired. And like, I get the sentiment. I felt like I might have been alone last year screaming this. But here's the difference to me. Ryan Poles drafted Caleb Williams. It is Ryan Poles' career rests on Caleb working out. That's the man I want making decisions for Caleb Williams' career. He has the most skin in the game. He has the most to gain from Caleb being good. So he's going to do the best things to make sure Caleb is good. Like that, he will max out what can be done for Caleb Williams more than anyone else will. And you might sit here and say, maybe doing all these things for Caleb Williams isn't the right choice. You might be right. In my mind, if I can get a Josh Allen type quarterback, I'll figure the rest out later. And that's the type of talent I think Caleb Williams can be. So for me, making sure he gets as close to his ceiling as possible is everything. And that's why I think now you're too late. You should have fired Poles a year ago. Now you can't. Now you are stuck with him, or else you're interviewing guys who, how committed was Ryan Poles to Justin Fields? I'm sure in the interview he was very committed to him. I don't think he was actually. I don't think his moves say at all that he was committed to Justin Fields the way he built those teams. I don't think you can go best faith, think that a GM is going to sit there and not lie through their teeth about that to get their multi-million-dollar job that they've been working their ass off for years as a scout making shit money. Like,
yeah.
They're going to say, yeah, we'll make it work with Justin. We'll make it work with Caleb. But they're not going to sacrifice their team building for it like they will if it's the quarterback they drafted. So to me, that's the safety for Ryan Poles here. I expect Ryan Poles to be extended. I don't think he deserves it, but I think he needs it because you need the coach and the GM to be on the same timeline. You can't have competing things happening there. You can't have the GM saying, I need to make the playoffs or I'm fired, while the coach says, I'm in year 1 of this thing. I want to build the trenches. Like, those are competing priorities that you need to avoid. So I think Poles is here. I think Poles gets extended to whatever the head coach contract looks like for the next guy.
I think you're 100% correct, and I think it has to be. The Bears can no longer keep playing these, out of order games. There needs to be alignment top to bottom. And you know what? You're right, Q. Ryan Poles has the most skin in the game with Caleb Williams than anybody, because Ryan Poles was also the one that can take credit for making the trade that, worked out to get Caleb. So you want the guy that, like you said, put the skin in the game to just ride it out. I tend to agree. And I think unfortunately he has to, but most GMs also get 2 coaches. That's kind of a general rule of thumb. Because again, to your point, they've got skin in the game. They're going to try to save their ass. But will he get the coach right? And is that why Kevin Warren's all of a sudden so involved? Does Kevin Warren get put on the same timeline? Maybe that's just tinfoil hat at this point. But Q, that's really
hats.
That's really maybe where we can take this argument that if alignment's the scheme, it's truly top to bottom, from Warren down.
Which is the whole issue with this whole thing, because Kevin Warren did not hire Ryan Poles, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But I mean, from that aspect, if we can think back to the last time this went wrong, right? We can think back to to Ryan Pace and Mitch Trubisky and how that went wrong because he had skin in the game, right? And that's probably what a lot of Bears fans, I think, are coming back to emotionally, thought process wise, of like if Ryan Pace did not have so much skin in the game on Mitch Trubisky, I don't think he makes as destructive of moves for the Bears from like 2019 through 2021, because that was him trying to save his ass because he picked the wrong guy. I don't think we're ever going to look at Caleb and say he was the wrong guy. I think we might look at him and say, yeah, they fucked him up. But I don't think we're going to sit there and say that was the wrong pick. And with Trubisky, it became clear pretty quick that it was the wrong pick when you had Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, who sucks now, but at his first few years was incredible, doing what they were doing. So to me, if I'm the McCaskies or Kevin Warren or whatever, I need to go to Ryan Poles through this process too and say, hey, if he's the wrong guy, doubling down on him is not the way. We'll work to fix it, but we need to, if he's the wrong guy, we need to work around that. We can't just double down, triple down on this thing under him.
Yeah. Incredibly well put. No notes, Q, no notes. That's the way it's got to be.
All right. So I like this comment from Scott too, saying the only issue he has with Poles is that he hasn't gotten the attitude players like Dick Butkus, Olin Kreutz, Mike Singletary. All three were great players, but they were nasty too. I mean, I think DeMarcus Walker is one of those guys, but he's not a Hall of Fame talent, which makes like Butkus, Olin, Singletary, they're all Hall of Fame caliber guys in my mind. Where like I think Javon Dexter's an attitude player. I think Javon Dexter brings the heat every single snap. I think Andrew Billings is. I think on the O-line, they're lacking it from Poles' perspective. I think Tev has it. I think Darnell has it. But outside of that, like I think it's pretty limited. And Tev has his issues with injuries. And, you know, I mean, I think there's some of those guys there. But Ron, what do you think about that?
I think, yeah, I think they really are missing a little bit of nasty. And I agree. I think Billings is a perfect example of that. I think Dexter is as well. But they just don't have enough of them on the defense, right? Like, you have a lot of them, truly. I think guys like Jalen Johnson.
Tyreek Stevens has got that dog on him. If he's got nothing else, he's got that dog in him.
Yeah, he's got that attitude. I mean, so I would say defensively, they've got some guys. Maybe they're lacking the guy that has the attitude on defense. Yeah. Maybe it is Jaquan Brisker, and he's just sorely that missed from the safety position.
Yeah, I think Brisker brought a lot to this defense that I probably underrated. Like in hindsight, I think this defense played differently with Brisker out there than they do now. That attitude that he brought.
Absolutely.
And truly, when did Tyreek Stevenson really start falling off? Was it when Brisker left the field?
I think so.
That's interesting. Wonder if there's something there of he kind of keeps him in line or something, or he knows how to communicate with him a way that the other guys don't, or not like he's doing sign language to him or anything, but like he knows what buttons to push. He's that type of leader.
Well, there's that type of, you need that again. That's that attitude. That's those leaders. Scott kind of makes a really good point here. No O-line or defensive line captains, right? You need those nasty dudes in the trenches. You've got nasty dudes in other positions, and they're clearly missed. But you want some of those guys in the trenches. Like, they don't have a Chris Jones like Kansas City does, or even half of that Kansas City offensive line. Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey.
Well, Trey Smith hits the market, I think he's going to be a Bear, but
it would be nice. It would look nice. It'd be a nice toy to add. I think if I'm Ryan Poles, I think he looks and he goes, all right, we got the quarterback right. Now you have to go get that line on both sides of the ball, start beefing around it. You clearly got a lot of the other things figured out.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely could use some more nasty, Q. I'd like to see a little bit more nasty.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's here's what I think it is. I think there's some nasty, but it's a lot of bark and not a lot of bite right now.
Oh yeah.
That makes it hard to be nasty, right? Like when you're getting your butt kicked, it's hard to keep being serious about it, you know?
Q,
Uh,
you led the show off with the quote from Kittle. Football's a violent sport. You got to go to that dark place. You got to be nasty. You know, that we saw that example today in this game. San Francisco was the nastier team. They just took it to them again and again and again and again, and they just beat them down. The Bears need some more of that. And I think that's got to be the priority to add to guys like Caleb and the rest of the playmakers.
I think so too. But with that being said, we're not going to do nicest man, baddest man. We don't do that in these games, these blowouts. It's like, what are we talking about here? But unless you want to throw in something there, Ron.
I will throw in something a little bit along those lines. The baddest thing about this game was the Caleb to Rome connection. I'm gonna inject a little bit of positivity because I need it as a Chicago Bears fan. My eyes hurt from what we saw today, hence the sunglasses. We got to see what I expect to be a thriving connection between Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams for the coming seasons. The Bears can play into that. I think any coach in the league has to see that and go, "Oh my God, they have the marquee duo, plus incredible other weapons." Oh, we sprinkle a little bit here in the trenches. Who's not going to want the Bears job? Because here's the thing: even if you're the organization dysfunctional, yeah, but if you get the chance, you know the legend you can become in Chicago if you're the next head coach that wins everything.
Hey, how many Super Bowls did Ditko win here?
One, and he's a hero to people in this city.
He is a forever idol. Like he will never go away, and that's it. Like there is no disappearing for him. I mean, I'm trying to think who's a team that won like one Super Bowl, and like how is Dick Vermeil talked about in St. Louis? You know, it's not the same as Ditka in Chicago. It's a different
100%.
thing. Now let's get into that keys to the game. Or did you have a nicest that you wanted to throw in there, Ron?
Everybody.
Okay.
Get back on the plane.
Yeah, I was thinking just the run game in general. But let's get into these keys to the game that we had.
Keys to victory.
All right, so our first one was establish the rushing attack with DeAndre Swift. Ron, DeAndre Swift had 14 carries for 38 yards. The Bears had 21 carries for 68 yards, with the other half of that really coming from Caleb Williams.
Boo. They didn't listen. Well, and maybe it's not even that they didn't listen. Maybe they just can't. We further highlight a need for the team this offseason because they could not establish the run, and they really haven't established the run. I think that's something that I wanted to note now that we have a few games of hindsight. These last 3 games before this one where they were playing fairly well, it was all the passing attack. DeAndre Swift was making big plays in the passing attack, not even in the rushing attack. They could not run the football.
They've struggled in the first half of each of these last 4 games now, and they haven't been able to run the ball in any of them.
No, not at all. And you go back to the earlier part of the season where the Bears were running the football effectively, and you go, wow, that is a crazy difference of where everything went. They could not get it done. So they get a thumbs down from me, Q, because clearly they don't believe in the run-lose brand of football, which is run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think they missed Roschon today. I don't think they could get anything in between the tackles. I think a lot of that is just Swift is too light. I don't think he can power that between the tackles very much. I think he's too light combined with mediocre vision between the tackles, which leads to him hesitating. And the second he's touched, he's done. So like he's not that guy who can hesitate in the hole and get anything out of it. He needs to be boom, you're through. So I think that impacted them some there. And then just, I mean, we'll talk about it in the O-line show. I'm sure I'll probably pull a lot of running clips just to hammer a point home on it this week, which I see makes you smile, which
Always,
of course,
always makes me smile.
But yeah, I think that they missed Roshan here. I think that they, I love Swift. I've talked on this show about how much I've really enjoyed Swift this year after really not being a fan of the signing. He's such a dynamic player, but I think everyone's right. He's not an every down back. He's just not.
Yeah, unfortunately not. And I would not be surprised, Q. I'm gonna tease people with a little bit of building the board thought for the upcoming months. Maybe the Bears do go running back in this draft, just later in the draft. I know there's already some sprinkle of like, do you take Gianti in the top 10? No. But this is a deep running back class coming up. I think that you're starting to see the limitations of what is kind of in the mix already. I bet you they have 2 5s. They'd have that 3 if there's a guy they really like. They can absolutely add a back who maybe if he's just another off-pace back and gives you another element that you lack, you can find something. We see these late-round running backs become impactful. Bucky Irving this season for the Buccaneers is a great example of that.
Chicago kid. Should have been a Bear.
Q, I'll tell you what. I would like to give it a quick pat on my own back. I am going to brag just a hair. The Ron Luce school of running back judgment was 2 for 2 because the 2 names I told you I loved on that running back show were Bucky Irving and Braylon Allen, and they've probably been the most impactful rookie backs this season.
Dude, Bucky Irving's been a dog. Like,
he's been so good.
Shout out to Hillcrest High School. You guys created a dog. Like, Bucky Irving rules. Braylon Allen, I was skeptical on Braylon Allen. I haven't followed him too closely, but I know he's getting run and doing well. So like, that's good on Ron Luce on those.
Yeah, school of running back. Q, that is my audition to do the running back group again this year, if you don't mind.
It's yours, man. You got it. I might be doing some of those with you, but man, you brought up Ashton Gianti, however, I'm not even sure how you pronounce it, but I gotta tell you, I might. I love that dude. I freaking love that dude. And I know all the analytics say don't ever do this but I'm becoming too much of a film just meatball where I'm just like, big guy run people over. Like
I get it. I watched that Mountain West Championship over the weekend. I saw that.
Yeah.
That performance by him. He was really good, man.
But let's get to our second key of the game and see how the Bears did. So I said Eric Washington needs to bring blitzes, games, stunts, and chaos because you need to take Isaac Guerrero out of his routes. You need to make him a pass protector because I don't think he can do it. And Ron, I think they failed at this one.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know what they were doing defensively today.
They were just quite frankly 4 guys at the O line, like straight. They were doing nothing special. They were saying go win.
There was like 1 or 2, right? 1 or 2 probably blitzes that I can remember off the top of my head that they brought. But it was like 1-man blitzes off the edge, and it's like, what are we doing? There's a reason George Kittle had 150 yards without anything more than a 33-yard catch. They just gashed. Absolutely gashed.
That's almost sadder that he did that when you weren't blitzing and like it wasn't just like 4-on-4 back there or something. And it's like, oh, okay, I get that. You get beat in 1-on-1 man coverage. Okay, but they were dropping 7 almost every rep, and he still did that. Just tough.
Carved. Absolutely carved.
Guerrero caught what? 2 balls for 50 yards? Like this entire key was about Guerrero. You need to make him a weakness, and he won't be a weakness unless you make him one. And they didn't make him one. So that's a straight F for me on that one. But our final key from Sunny was that it's time for the Bears to put up or shut up, because over the last 6 weeks, there's been a lot of talking, and there's no more time for excuses. They need to figure it out and find a way to win a football game. And Ron, I think we're going to be in loud agreement on this one. That's an F.
It's a big no for me, dog.
Yeah, like that one, just simple as that. Just they didn't do it. Now, let me check my notes here. So, believe it or not, I do have show notes ready for this. I want to mention something that was said in the post-game press conferences. I think it was Kevin Fishbane who asked this to Caleb. He said, how hard is it for the captains to continue to galvanize guys when you're losing? And Caleb's answer was, my job, the captain's job, speaking of all the captains, this is a summary, it's not word for word, but it wasn't saying my job as captain, but my job and all the other captains is to lead from the front, even when it's tough. My job is not to get you up to come to the facility to do your job, to have after hours treatment, all these different things. It's an internal thing to get up and do the job over and over, to keep fighting, to keep throwing punches. As leaders, we need to keep getting up, fighting, and leading. Now, there was a lot more ums within that. There was hesitation at times, and I almost got the vibe that he said something and went, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that, and then tried to walk it back a little. But Ron, what do you think of those words?
I mean, there's a little bit of, I would say a little bit of a political state in the answer, right? Just like you said, trying to walk it off. But I mean, they were the loudest voices, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of leaders on this team were the loudest voices, and maybe this is just the good one that they need to kind of look themselves in the mirror, right? Sometimes you need just a good old-fashioned ass whooping to reset things and try and figure out an establishment. Most of these guys are going to be here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Now is the time where you start to do maybe some self-judgment the rest of the season about how the team's playing and things like that. And I think that's where Caleb was kind of leaning with his statement. I don't think it was off the wall. I think they respect him enough where there's no issue, I think, in what he said. They got to come back hungry next week because they got a tough battle against Minnesota. And Cube, Monday Night Football, no?
Is it? I thought it was Sunday night. Is it Monday night?
Is it Sunday night? It might be Sunday night.
But so I guess the thing that really caught my eye with this quote was my job is not to get you to come up to the facility and do your job, to have after hours treatment, all these different things, because that rings to me really similar to something we heard from Jalen Johnson a few weeks ago. When Jalen Johnson went on the score and said, at a certain point, you just think in your head, maybe he doesn't give a damn like I give a damn. At the end of the day, that's okay. But you can't necessarily change somebody's want to or hunger to do something or be uncomfortable. It seems to be a very, very similar tone. And like he said something along the lines of, you can take a horse to the well, but you can't make him drink. Like just a lot of feeling of within the locker room, I guess, of we can show you guys what to do, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
Which that quote to me kind of rings the same tone, which is just, I just thought that was interesting. Thought that was worth noting on here, because it doesn't sound like a good place for the locker room. It sounds like, if you're not doing it after Eberflus is gone, when the hell are you going to start doing it? I'm curious who they're talking about, but I'm also just, all sucked into the gossip of it, I guess, in the reality TV aspect at this point.
Yeah, it's a lot of they said, and we'll have to see what happens from there. But an interesting quote nonetheless, Q. I think we're going to learn a lot.
Yeah, you're right. It is Monday Night Football next week.
Great. Prime time.
So one thing I want to touch on, because I'm sure there's some talking going on about like these guys have quit, and I'm not quite sure about that, especially for guys who are upcoming free agents. They can't afford to quit. They have a whole contract on the line. So I wanted to kind of run through who those guys are. So I mean, Keenan Allen still wants to play next year, still looking for a contract. He's a free agent. Then you got Darrell Taylor, defensive end, Coleman Shelton at center, Tevin Jenkins at guard, Jacob Barton, defensive end, Matt Pryor, offensive guard, Chris Williams, defensive tackle. I guess that's about it. Jack Sanborn is probably due for a pay. He's a restricted free agent, so he's looking for a pay increase. And then you probably have some other guys who you're saying, they're playing for their not to be cut next year, right? Like, because they could be cap casualties of, like, let me pull up their salary cap. Guys like maybe, let's see. So a guy like Cole Kmet could be a cap casualty. I don't expect him to, but that's just they'd save a good amount by moving on from him. Kevin Byard could be a big cap casualty for them. He's essentially playing for his contract next year. TJ Edwards, Gerald Everett. I mean, I think he's probably an afterthought at this point. Like, I don't think he's going to be back, but the Bears will save cap for moving on from him. DeMarcus Walker, they can move on from really easily. So there are most of these guys have something to play for. There's only a handful that are really secure, locked up, like Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson, DJ Moore, and guys on rookie contracts who you're really sitting there saying they don't have a lot of incentive to be good right now.
Yeah, they don't have. And they're going to be able to reset again, and we'll have to wait and see what happens, Q. It's going to be an interesting offseason, but this is the game that I think Bears fans are hoping to quickly forget as we look forward to Monday Night Football.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Any final thoughts, Ron, before we close this thing out?
Oh, no, just that wasn't fun. Some days it's not, most days it's not fun being a Bears fan, but this one was definitely not fun.
No, not lately. It's really been a grinder. But see, any final thoughts from me? Let's see. So, I mean, my main takeaway was I just think the Bears got outcoached today, outplayed, out-efforted, however you want to put it. I think that really where I'm landing on it is we're talking about a guy's first game as head coach going up against the Super Bowl caliber coaching staff and Kyle Shanahan and his guys who I think they just called their hand. I think they just said, "You got two pair over there, don't you?" And then Thomas Brown looked over his play sheet, just his eyes looked back down. They went, "He's got two pair. Oh, we're going to mess with him." And they didn't have a backup plan because he's been in this job for a week, So ultimately, I wish it went better, but I'm not like devastated by it because that's just going to happen when you're going up against a good coach and you're on an interim coach, like especially on his first week on the job. Like I wish there was more variety within there of wrinkles that they put into their game plan that were different. Like there's one quote on the broadcast that really stuck out to me. Jonathan Vilma said, "Brock Purdy is getting the looks he expected in practice, and he's just executing." And I'm sitting here thinking, like, why the hell did they know what to practice? Like, why aren't there wrinkles in there that you're saying, oh, they won't see this coming? Like, we haven't done this all season because Eberflus didn't like it, but I love it. Like, it's that type of stuff that kind of gets me. But at the end of the day, like I said, I think Kyle Shanahan and his staff called what they saw, and it was exactly what they saw. And Bears weren't able to adjust because it's new staff, new guys in place. Hope it gets better. I don't necessarily expect it to get tons better on defense because I think they're a little limited and we kind of know what Eric Washington is. But offensively, I think it will get better from here because I believe that Thomas Brown's a smart, capable coach. I don't know if he's head coach material yet, but I believe him to be a smart, capable coach who's going to find answers.
I like your positivity, Q. I think I needed that before we signed off of here.
All right. Well, Ron, you want to get out of here the only way we know how.
Bear down, baby.
Bear down.